And welcome back, everybody. Week 7. This is exciting. We've learned so much, still have some work to do, so let's get to it. So this week we're talking about project management, and now in terms of resource management, some other important items, and we'll continue to discuss leadership and management in part 2. So here we go. We've already talked about this, but I just wanted to bring it up again as it relates to how we organize roles and responsibilities. I've said before, we could do it hierarchically, like an organizational breakdown structure. We see that as an org chart. Similarly, we could take an org chart and turn it into a resource breakdown structure, or we could use a work breakdown structure and add roles and responsibilities to the WBS dictionary. Now, another way to do that is to use a RAM, a responsibility assignment matrix, which ties work packages in your WBS to people and deliverables. Now, a better way, a more detailed way, a drill down way is to use a RACI. It's a type of RAM, and it stands for responsible, accountable, consult, and inform. Remember, there's only one person that is accountable. We've already talked about these, so I'm just moving through them. Here's a quick chart on what that looks like. And notice, for each activity in a RACI defines activities. And notice these are people, these are organizations, right? And for each activity, there's only one accountable. There can be multiple responsible, multiple that you inform, multiple people or organizations you consult with, right? Along the way. Now, quick celebration of knowledge. I love it. You can pause, read the question. When you're done, the answer is B1. Okay. So when we're planning our resource management, don't forget about things like the team charter. I mentioned this last week. The team charter is an important product, and it's not to be confused with the actual project charter, right? Which is high level. It's about driving to a product deliverable, right? But this is about the team charter, to establish team values, write it down, make agreements with each other. It's a way of setting clear expectations of what is accepted and how do we even reduce conflicts or manage conflict along the way. It's about how do we make decisions or consult with each other. What are the norms for team values, expectations, and communication, right? This is particularly important in the agile world, which must follow a rapidly changing and moving target. We have already talked this somewhat, but there's, just as a reminder, management versus leadership, right? All of this understanding comes into play when we're managing resources. So we've already discussed this. I won't labor on it too much, but on the left, you see a management role, which is more controlling, more about writing it down, more about following it up and driving, task-driven, commander-like, where leadership in general is more about mission, vision, goals, motivating the team, being persuasive, right? Leadership is the art of influence, which is how we communicate even in the virtual world, and perhaps delivering rewards. So we want to have, this is just a review, a good solid emotional IQ along the way to enhance our abilities. We've already discussed this, so I'll let you pause and review it again. So when we have resource management, we want to estimate. Now, there are only 3 places that we estimate in project management. We estimate in schedule management, which is estimating the durations. We estimate in cost management, which is estimating the actual costs. And we estimate in resource management. And all 3 of those areas are tied together. Resources, schedules, and costs, all tied together through this process. But notice the outputs you want to identify as you look to balance the iron triangle, the baselines of cost, schedule, and scope. You want to estimate the resources because all resources aren't the same. Somebody with 2 years experience isn't the same as somebody with 10, or a manager isn't the same as somebody with 5 years of experience, right? So we want to look at our resource requirements, and we want to write down when we decide what our resource requirements are, what was the basis for that estimate? We want to make sure that from a lessons learned perspective, did we nail it or did we have to make corrections? It's okay to make corrections, right? What we're doing is unique. The very definition of a project, unique and time bound. So we want to make notes and formally record our basis of the estimates and maybe even plot out an RBS, which we talked about in an earlier slide today, which was a hierarchical form of doing roles and responsibilities. This is a good slide that is estimating isms. It applies to schedules, it applies to costs, it applies to resources. So now's a good opportunity to pause it and read it for yourself in detail. But just notice some key points, right? Analyze first. Project managers always do that. You end up with a more accurate estimate if you're working on smaller components, right? So know that you will get a better estimate if you're working on tinier activities or areas. And the one doing the work should be the one giving you the estimate, right? That's where you're going to get the best one. And no padding. Do not pad estimates in project management. Otherwise, our lessons learned can be meaningless or watered down. We did talk also about ways to acquire the team, and you do that through the team members can be dedicated, part-time, virtual, or in a partnership, and sometimes they are pre-assigned to us, like in the charter. You might see that, or you negotiate for them with the other functional managers that you have to borrow resources from, or they might be attained through a virtual teams. They might be acquired by procurement even. I would add another one to that. So keeping up with this theme, right, we want to then develop the resources that we have, and ways to do that easily, to build a team, which is critical to finally getting to a high-performing team, which is the ultimate goal. We want to co-locate them. We want to address virtual teams and how we can maximize them. We want to make sure that we have communication technology in place to support that effort. And this is where our interpersonal skills really come to bear. We did talk also about the halo effect, I believe. But a halo effect is a cognitive bias, right, of an individual's worth based on some single attribute. If we see somebody pretty or handsome, we go, they must be good at what they do. No, stop. But there is that halo effect, that bias out there, that we see somebody either good or bad overall based on a single interaction we had with them or a single physical trait. We want to avoid that. People have value and bring real skills to our mission, and we want to assess them accurately. People have good days, bad days, change. So as we're developing high-performing teams, you'll get into trouble if you do the halo effect. Now, there's also, as we're building our team, consider the Tuckman stages of team development. They basically fall under forming, storming, norming, performing, and then adjourning. Tuckman really just sticks with forming, storming, norming, and performing. But eventually we have to make sure that they get recognition, go back to their business unit, get a new job, etc. So many of us add adjourning to it. Building teams through these stages is about getting to high productivity teams. So here is a way to look at it, right? Forming, storming, norming, and performing. And your role as the project manager, when they're forming, they're in orientation and they're more independent. You're going to tell them what to do, and you're going to work to develop trust. In storming, where people become dissatisfied, where conflict begins to arise, where they're just learning to integrate, you're going to guide and coach them, for example. Under norming, where you're integrating the team, trust is growing, you're beginning to share leadership. You become more autonomous. You begin to participate with them. And under the performing stage, if you get them to that, you will delegate and give them space to work. Now, I want to note that there's no guarantee of moving beyond storming. Sometimes you go into storming and don't leave it. Sometimes you go in and out of forming and storming, or storming and norming, right? You want to work to get them through that. Now, in the agile world, you'll also want to make sure you consider some other approaches. You could use this in the predictive project management developmental life cycle also. The Shuha-Ri model is a 3-step process. People will obey the rules, then they will move from the rules, begin to break free, and then they will find their individual path. The Dreyfus model is similar. It goes from someone being a novice to a beginner, competent, proficient, and expert. And as that changes, their commitment will evolve, their decision making with it, and their perspective. So be aware of that. So in team development, we'll have a number of outputs, including team performance assessments. So here's just a question on team performance assessments, right? You have the resource management plan and the project staff assignments. What do you need to do before you start developing the team? You need to develop project resource calendar would be my answer. Before I start to develop the team, before I do training or team building, I have to know when they're available, when the training is available, what training they need, what are the company days off, what are the federal or state days off, and all that goes into a resource calendar. Now, to make a great team work, I have to motivate them. So we want to consider these motivational theories. They're really self-explanatory, and most of us have experience with them, so I'm going to move through them quickly. But there's McGregor's Theory X and Theory Y. And so a Theory X leader is going to feel that people need to be watched, driven, they're unmotivated, they dislike work. Where a Theory Y leader thinks, hey, people want to achieve, and they need freedom from us so that they can work without supervision. Maslow's hierarchy is all about getting through these stages from physiological needs up to self-actualization. We're all working for self-actualization, but we can't even get to safety until our physiological needs are met. And once we get to safety, once those needs are met, then we can pursue love and belonging, etc. Others include McClellan's theory of needs, which base motivation on achievement, affiliation, or power. People are motivated by those, no doubt. If somebody's motivated by achievement, I'm going to make sure they're recognized. What do I care? If they've done a good job, let's do it. It motivates them. I love, my favorite of all, I think, is Herzberg's hygiene theory. So you can notice there are two things: motivating agents, which sound like a lot like a summary of the other theories of motivating theories, and then there are hygiene factors. Those are working conditions or things that if they're really bad and you improve them, yes, you'll motivate. But if you just tweak them, like give them a 1% raise, you're not really motivating. The hygiene factor, making good conditions better, doesn't really motivate. Contingency theory is another. You can read that there. Theory Z and expectancy theory are some more. And so in the end, you want to drive these motivating things to, and do work performance reports on people. In fact, do team assessments also. You might keep an issues log, not just for the project, but a separate one based on performance standards. So in doing so, here's a fun question and a celebration of knowledge. Pause the video now and review it. And the answer is C, of course, manage project team. Now, as I manage the project team, I could pause the video and review this question. The answer is A. Okay. And we will come back then after the break, talk a little bit about conflict management, and then go right into some stages of team development some more.